Welcome to another episode of Alumni's Den. Today we have a very, very special guest inside the den for this episode. He is an experienced IT leader. He is when you talk about a negotiator, you talk about this guest. He is really experienced in doing tough negotiations on projects. So if ever you're having difficulty negotiating a contract for a project, this is the guest you'd want to talk to. A proven track record in application development. Our very special guest was my risk management professor at Algonquin College, Pete Grieve. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Did
you even pass my course? I don't remember. Did you?
I got an A. I got an
What?
A in your course, sir.
Wow. Wow, I was just giving marks away that semester.
I have so many things I want to talk to you about. No doubt you're one of my favorite professors there. I have five. I said it when I spoke to Angela, when I spoke to Martin.
Okay.
And I'm still not going to name my five favorites, but no doubt you're one of them. You exude this confidence when you come to class. It's like you're super chill, and it's like there's no filter. I love that because in Jamaica, like Jamaicans are very direct and straightforward. And I realized that as a Canadian, it was kind of strange to see you exude that kind of, directness. But it was just amazing. It really gravitates to the students and grab your attention. There was no sleeping in your class. And I'm sure all your students did well, but it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Inside the den. A lot of Canadians are talking about Thursday night's event, the hockey game
Right.
between U.S. and Canada. And I saw a post after the game by the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, saying that you cannot take our country and you cannot take our game. What was that like for you?
I think we're in a very trying to be politically correct here. I think we're in a very questionable time when you've got such a leader running the U.S. that you just foreshadow the fact that that country is going to be so much worse off 4 years from now than what it is today. And
Do you think that?
Oh yes, and we see it. We see it week after week after week after week. The one thing that he's actually doing is bringing Canadians together. So regardless of what our political views were prior to this, his little baby crying, pouting, threatening, bully mechanisms there are bringing people closer together as Canadians,
Right.
and hopefully that will follow through.
So you saw that with the game and Canadians winning that game. It feels like the entire country was on board.
Right.
being a part of
It was
that.
more than just a hockey game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's -1 degrees outside, and this is really good weather. I'm not Canadian, but I can say that we were speaking off air, and you stated that you have survived.
I've survived 58 of these winters, and I really wonder if this should be the last. I just don't have the tolerance for the snow or the enjoyment for the snow that maybe when I was younger I had. So,
Do Canadians ever get used to the snow?
I don't know. With so many that were snowbirds and that, it would appear not, or we hit a certain tolerance when we get to a certain age, and go, yeah, we don't need this, and there are alternatives.
There's Professor Paul would normally say when it touches winter, he's gone to Mexico.
Okay. Okay.
But for persons who know you in the professional space, they know you as an IT expert, a project management professional, and a professor at Algonquin College and different universities that you have taught at, but they don't know Pete
Wow, that may be better for me if I keep that.
On a personal level.
Right.
Share with us. Who is Pete? How tell us your background.
Usually only my therapist knows the truth about that. So, I'm not that deep. I'm not that much different than what you saw in class.
What was life like growing up as a kid?
Wow, you're really making me go far back there, history-wise, and that, right? I was a wonderful child that turned into a wonderful man, and I'm still wonderful. So,
Did you enjoy sporting activities growing up? Reading? What was the avenue of your focus
I
growing
am
up?
the third son of my mom and dad, and the first two older ones there, they were the jocks, the true jocks of the family in that, right? By the time I came along, I was, hey, what are we going to name that one?
Playing catch up.
And, so no, my upbringing was pretty average, pretty normal. Working class parents there. My dad was ex-army. My mom was an office worker, and we're pretty middle class.
Yeah. When you were a young boy growing up, what was the vision for yourself?
I had no vision for myself, really. I had no real game plan. Yeah.
So when did you're in project management now? When did you decided to get involved in project management?
I think most people around in my generation, my age group there, we kind of defaulted into project management. It wasn't something that we actually were going to graduate from or become. So I worked in IT first as a developer, and listening to Angela's presentation, her and I, my background are very similar. I was a decent developer, but it didn't thrill me at all. And then I went into business analysis there because I really liked working with the clients and filling out and determining what the scope and the actual requirements for the project should be. And then being somewhat successful with that, being able to engage people and get solutions done in that, I kind of became a project manager before there was even certification for it. So I actually was doing the role prior to being certified as a project manager. So then that was my attempt to formalize the career path and get my PMP.
How easy was it for you?
You know what? It'll be interesting in the long run to see what approach actually ends up being more successful there. My generation, that you work in an industry, you progress up, and then you become a project manager, and then you get your certification, versus a lot of people in your generation there have a little bit of work experience, decide to get their designation or their certification as a PM, and then go back either into their original industry or try a new industry without the business background per se. So it'll be interesting to see in the long run what's the more successful path there.
Okay. why should Canadian organizations consider project management? Why should they be interested in project management?
I'm going to even go beyond just Canadian organizations because I've actually worked on many international projects as well too, which sounds very dramatic, and it's not meant to sound dramatic, but I've had many clients who were from other countries as well too. And I think the good thing about project management is it brings a kind of discipline to go from A to B to C to successful implementation there. And it brings a skill set that allows you to be able to deliver a quality product at the end. And it depends on what industry that we're talking about. I always laugh when I do renovations around my house, like I had a new roof put on and I had a new fence installed. And it was, I would have 5 to 7 companies come out to give me a quote, and half of them wouldn't even follow up with a quote. And I always have a rule of if you can't provide me with a quote when I'm trying to give you money, what says you're going to show up to do the job after I've signed the contract, right? So I always joke that I think my next career is going to be the blue collar PM that actually organizes this whole quoting business and successful gathering of sales and that for blue collar workers. And traditionally, a lot of these are men, and the successful ones tend to have a wife or a partner that actually does the office part of it there. So there's a lot of industries that require the discipline of a project manager to come in and guide them through. We're not militant. We're not, we're not, we're not overly rigid in that, but sometimes some industries in particular there call out for, I don't know if it's a left brain, right brain sort of thing, but the discipline that usually a successful PM, the skills that we have to be able to go, no, we're supposed to have that done today. Next week, we're going to need that. But before we can do that, we need this done and this bought and this brought in to be able to make it through.
What are some of the misconceptions of project management?
I think a lot of it could be that that we, that maybe we have it all figured out. That we walk in there with a full playbook, and then you throw in things like people's different personalities and restrictions and what have you, and we have to adapt our proven way to any business as well too. So sometimes the fact that we need to be much more flexible than maybe what we're kind of taught. And sometimes we don't have all the answers as well too. That's why I like to spend a lot of time with clients and actually understand their motivations, what they're trying to accomplish there, and then work with them as a trusted business partner in collaboration, not take over and, like a general of an army here. I want to actually work with them to be able to implement.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's what I love about project management. It's not like program management where this is a cyclical thing and hey, this is what we're doing, and they just tell you what to do and you're doing it. But it takes the collaboration, learning the culture, and I think that's when I had an appreciation for international project management, which it dives deep into the culture of the organization. As you said.
Right.
It's amazing. We want to hear about some of your experiences that you have had working with certain organization and utilizing your PMP skills. Tell us about some of your experiences, maybe from the earlier ones to the more recent ones, because as you work on different projects, I assume you should get better at doing it. What was that like for you?
Yeah, and it depends too on if you stay in the same industry or if you move around quite a bit as well too, right? You can always have part of a learning curve as well. So when I first started working, I worked for an insurance company, and after a couple years, I ended up moving to a different insurance company. And with that, you bring some industry knowledge there, right? So all of a sudden, your world is kind of focused on 2 or 3 past experiences, histories, and that you bring along with you. So then you can become somebody who can bounce around ideas and that based on your past experience as well. And then all of a sudden you move to a different industry altogether, right? And then you're actually kind of being a learner along the way as well too. So you bring some skills, but you actually have to adapt to that particular industry as well too. And so you spend a lot of your time, when I say the 5 whys, right? Asking a whole lot of questions about, well, why do you do it that way? And well, why? And why? And why. Sometimes you need to drill down to the 5th why to actually find what the root cause is, right? And then I moved up here to Ottawa, and I did a lot of government contracts as well too. And prior to that, I was actually a hiring manager for an e-commerce company. And at that time, I really had, I'm going to say, kind of not a negative view, but a very reserved view of government workers. Mm-hmm. And I was apprehensive to actually bring anybody from the government into a private sector type role, because I thought they were, all government workers were the same kind of thing, right? And that wasn't the case. And I've probably worked at 7 different government agencies and departments and that, and they're very different, one from the other type thing, right? And some have been very entrepreneurial in nature, and others were more what you would envision a government department to be, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But you just can't paint them all with the same brush.
What's one of your favorite projects that you've worked on? Just share with us that experience when you got the call to work on this project, and you got it. What was it like from before you started, during, and then after? And why it was your favorite?
I think I would have to say one of my favorite projects was one that I wasn't even going to go for the interview for. You weren't going to go for the interview? No, I wasn't going to go for the interview because I was working at another government department. And when the recruiter phoned me and said, Parks Canada wants to interview you, and I said, oh, I'm already somewhere. And they kind of went, well, you should at least go for the interview, kind of thing, right? And I went, oh, okay, so I interviewed, and I was there for 8.25 years.
Wow.
On
the
contract.
Job that you didn't want to go for the interview.
I didn't want, or didn't think and by far, I probably brought a lot of professional satisfaction to me and a lot of personal growth and satisfaction as well too. We had procured and implemented the reservation system that Parks Canada uses for campsite reservations, and we expanded it to include bus passes and rentals and equipment rentals and what have you. I worked with a great team of people, and they were located throughout Canada. So it gave me an opportunity to actually work with a team of people that were remote in like 4 different time zones and that, and challenges with that. We selected a great vendor, implemented a fantastic solution, and kind of expanded it with a product roadmap over all that time. And so at some point, it's funny because I was brought in because of my e-commerce experience there. But after X amount of time, I was kind of thought of as another Parks Canada person, and my views weren't, I don't think, as heard as much as at the beginning when I was brought in as kind of the expert on e-commerce. And that's when I thought, you know what, I think it's time I move on, because now I'm just kind of thought of as another voice at Parks Canada, as opposed to, you know, somebody with a specialty and what have you, kind of thing, right? You know?
Yeah.
Plus, after, 8.25 years, we're getting ready to procure the second campground reservation system, because in government world, no matter how good of a relationship or a solution is, you have to retender regularly to ensure you're getting the best value for the taxpayers' money in that. Yeah. So it was like, hey, do you want to go through the next procurement cycle again? And I went, no, done that,
Yeah. So
time for new challenges.
Makes sense. After a while, you want new challenges, a fresh everything, environment, different tasks and stuff. Tell us when you had that low moment in working on a project that you maybe didn't like. It was challenging. You wanted to give up. Did you ever had that experience?
Oh yeah, totally. I was on a particular project there, and I won't mention the company there, but I actually had a panic attack. I was actually reporting into 2 different leaders within the organization there, and the 2 of them didn't care for each other much. So there was a whole lot of use me as a pawn type thing. And I was finally, I was sitting in my car and I was like breathing, my heart was pounding there. I couldn't focus. I couldn't, and a good friend of mine is a counselor. And when I was telling him about the symptoms, he went, "Pete, that's a panic attack. Why are you even there? You don't like the job. You're coming home. You're falling asleep. You're waking up at 2 a.m. You don't need the money. So, why don't you just walk?" Kind of thing, right? And that's something that my generation doesn't know how to do. I kind of admire your generation, which is more like, no, my mental health is worth more than the couple bucks you're going to put in my wallet. So I will work under these conditions, and if that's not good enough for you, I'll pass. That's where I think my generation could benefit from actually observing closer than,
It's a very good point. What would you say if a project manager is working on a project and there are certain things happening in that working environment, be it from the sponsors, key stakeholders who are responsible for that project? What are some of the, I don't know if I should call them red flags, but some of the things that you'd say, hey, this is not for me, this is not how it should be? What are some of the signs you would say that should be taken into consideration to part ways or to move on?
That might be a tough one for me to answer, because I obviously waited till it was too late. And it wasn't until the physical signs or, that actually happened in that. Now going forward, I always like to, have good conversations during the interview as to, so what do you see as being successful here? Do I have a good team that's been assigned to this? Is the timeline reasonable? Is there money there? Are we covering off the risks, et cetera, type thing, right? I think this was an unusual circumstance there, and I've never faced it again. So,
Interesting.
I think, but I think definitely if I always say to my students there, keep your connections, keep your mental health important to you. Keep your friends prior to becoming a project manager. You need your friends that you used to have a meal with that would make fun of you, or be able to go play golf or squash or what have you, kind of thing, an outlet there. And make sure you keep your family and friends, because a lot of people end up working 130%, like dedicated to the job, and they start losing off their connections there. They start skipping their hobbies and interests in that because they want to give it all for work there. In one particular case, the e-commerce company I was working for was trying to sell themselves, and so they got rid of all middle management there. So they got rid of the BA manager, which I was. They got rid of the dev manager, the QA manager. They got rid of one of the HR managers and that. So they got rid of a whole layer of people so that they could make their bottom line more attractive when they put themselves out on the market for purchase there. That was an excellent lesson for me, because it taught me, you know what, if you were to drop dead on your job, they would just take your fat carcass to the end of the laneway and dump you, and they'd have somebody else in your chair before your funeral. So just know that, a company is looking out for themselves, and they may say that they're pro people and our people are our success and what have you. I don't know how real that is. That's a popular thing to say.
Do you think there are companies that really look out for their people or their employees?
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may be held against me. You know what? I'm sure there are. I'm sure. And maybe I'm just old and cynical. Okay. I'll let your viewers there write in about how, they work for a company that is all about love and hugs and, butterfly kisses at the end of the workday.
You're giving away some gems here, Pete, particularly for students who are going into, after completing their program and going into the working world here in Canada, particularly international students, how important it is to consider themselves before the job.
Yeah.
So they're watching now, right? Alumni in particular, from a project management program. And they want to go into different companies, but they're not too sure where to go. How would you guide them? What would be some steps, or what would be the best approach for them? Because sometimes they try to do the mass sending out of resumes because they just want to pick up a job. But what do you
it's a somewhat tough job market right now. So fire everywhere and see what actually, comes up for a bite type thing, right? I would suggest that people take a good look at themselves as to the type of organization they want to work for. Like I said, when I worked for the e-commerce company there, it was a small company, and I got to do so much different things. If I was feeling analytical that day, I could do I worked as engagement manager and did contracts with clients there. I could respond to RFPs that were out there. If I felt more chatty, I could talk to existing clients that we were working with there to see how everything was doing. Or since I was the BA manager, I could get the team together and do some sort of team building or meeting or what have you kind of thing, right? So I had that luxury. Other companies, and I'm just saying like an IBM or a Microsoft, your job is more defined in a square there. And this is all that you were brought in for. And you can't do anything beyond that square because there are people who are consuming what you're producing, and there are people that are producing what you're consuming. So it's so well defined there that everybody has restrictions or limitations as to what they can do. Plus things like, how much travel do you want to do with your job? Like, and is it feasible? Like if you have a family of 14 kids, is it fair that you're
14 kids?
Yeah, the Elon Musks of the world and what have you, right? If you want to, is it fair that you're away for 5 days in a row? And I did a 13-month project down in St. Louis, Missouri, and I flew every Monday morning at 4 a.m. And I got back on Friday night at midnight for the majority of that time. And that was fine for me and my lifestyle. But I worked with a gentleman who was a Microsoft architect, and he had 3 kids there. And not surprising there, that marriage didn't survive, right?
Wow.
So I'm just saying that know what, like it's more than just you. It may be your family unit, and things change over time. So you might be fine doing heavy traveling now, but within 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 pets, you've got kids, you've got a spouse or a partner, and therefore, that doesn't fit anymore. So know what you want out of a job and try to target that. But I also say, sometimes your first job, you're going for experience. It may not be exactly the role you want. It may not be the money you want, and it may not be the industry you want. But once you have some real experience behind you, the second jump is more where you can control and say, no, I don't like those hours. I don't like to live in that city. I don't like that particular job there. So as you advance more, you gain more control over what you select and what you want to work in.
From your perspective, what would you say are some of the companies that you know of that are more project management focused, and where should recent graduates focus?
You know what? That's really hard to say. That's where you really need to do your research when you're going into the interview. Both LinkedIn and also Glassdoor is another great resource as well too. I worked for a company somewhat recently there that ended up having zero respect for the discipline of project management. And I knew this because, when I had been hired by the VP of information technology, and he was a great guy, and he had built up a really strong team. And when they ran into some financial difficulties there, he was let go, and a lot of the PMs were kind of, their roles changed into more of a tick role there, where every Monday you had to report that you were 17% done versus 14% last week there. And other roles were actually taking in the the actual trusted business advisor part of it there. And you just kind of go, you know what? This organization doesn't respect what a PM can do. And, and that's where a lot of quality people left. And then that left, I'm going to say, junior or lesser PMs, which kind of self-fulfilled that prophecy for that company. They kind of went, well, yeah, look at the PMs we have. No wonder why we can't trust them. And it's like, oh, well, you let half the good ones out the door.
Leave,
and now you're taking inventory and saying this, right? So I think, I think looking into what their view of project management is, what their commitment is, and the successful track record that they can demonstrate to you, all during the interview process.
When a recent graduate starts working at a company, how do they demonstrate their abilities, their leadership skills, take initiatives? Because it can be difficult, especially when you don't know the culture of the company.
Right.
What would be your suggestion in terms of approach?
I know from my perspective there, when I was hiring co-ops, when I worked for the insurance company, I always hired co-ops from a particular university in town. And I always looked for team sports, because all these people had the same education. They had the same, similar backgrounds in that when I was hiring for the co-ops. And I didn't want people to come in and disrupt my existing team. So I wasn't looking for the solo artist that's used to being, king or queen, insert word there. And because they're going to come in and they're all about being, number one. They're number one. They're number one.
The star.
And the rest of the team there, can feel the shift of the energy and what have you. And a good project manager there should lead, but should actually inclusively bring all the components and all the team members together and get the most out of them. So I suggest to the students there, when they're interviewing, talk about your group work. Talk about how you successfully work together as team for one success. We all succeed together. And maybe if you went above and beyond to try to bring a skill set out of somebody who was either shy or not as strong there, and you help develop them, that goes to a lot of a lot of extra points on the resume tally type thing, or job applicant tally.
That's very interesting. I've never looked at it like that.
Yeah.
Instead of showing that, hey, I can do this for me, look at someone who might be struggling, or there are gaps or errors for improvement, and you working with that person to bring them up.
Especially because a lot of us, when we go into projects, we don't get to pick our team members. We walk in and we're told, hey, you've inherited these people. And maybe you've heard rumors about some of these people. Maybe you've even worked with some of these people before, and you kind of go, great. But if you can, not everybody performs here. Some people perform here. And if you can get this performer to actually move up to here, you've shown progress with them, right? You're never going to get a performer here up to here. That's unrealistic there. And you're going to, it's just going to cause a whole lot of frustration on your end. And that person doesn't want to be there. But if you can get them there, then you've shown some good progress.
That's amazing. That's great advice there.
Thanks.
That's a $1 million advice.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Send the check payable to Pete Grieve.
What are some of the certs or certificates that you think are important to have as a project manager or someone who is interested in that field?
Ironically, I was just talking to a recruiter friend of mine about a month or so ago, and she was saying that Ottawa area is actually saturated with PMPs, that you actually need at least another certification to differentiate yourself. Right. So you may want to look into whatever area that you're working into. If you have a combination of a project management designation plus whatever business entity that you're involved with as well, too, be it construction, be it IT, just to be able to bring more to the table. The expectation maybe is more, value for the buck kind of thing. Right. Myself, and you even see that in the PMI about how they're trending into different areas as well, too. Of course, they've recently been heavy into agile there, but they also put out their own professional business analysis certification there to compete with the IIBA. And I wouldn't be surprised if, there's some sort of change management that comes out as well, too, because companies are now recognizing that if you can build whatever in a project, but if you can't get your company and your workers to actually embrace it, it's another useless tool that sits on a shelf there. So actually implementing something. So much before, I was wise. When I was at the insurance company, we were implementing a new underwriting tool going from the dot matrix screen to a GUI front end. And there would actually be some reports that are automatically ordered. So once upon a time, the underwriting assistant, who at that time was traditionally women in their mid to late 40s or 50s, they would order reports on insureds, right? So if you're going for auto insurance, we'd see how many previous claims you had, how many accidents have you had. If you're going for property insurance, how many claims have you had? What's your credit score as well? And all of those reports would be manually requested by the underwriting assistant. And then when we implemented this new project here, a lot of these reports would be triggered by the system without the need for the underwriting assistant to actually do that step. So I would get phone calls from a lot of these women because they were used to me coming out to the branch to do system training of any sort of implementation that happened. And they would phone me up and they'd say, "Hey, Pete, I hear there's a delay with the new system." And I said, "Yeah, it's probably about 6 months late type thing." And they went, "Oh, good, because we're planning our retirement for when the new system rolls out." And that is so poor that these particular people, and I'm stereotyping here, but I'm saying these older women, at the time I was much younger, now I'm that same age, so but at the time these older women were so scared of change that they were going to actually leave the workforce and either do early retirement or take another job because they were so afraid of the new tool that would be there for them to use. And that meant we did not successfully do a change management implementation there. We should have actually been talking this new system up. We should have been telling them how it'd be so much better for what they were doing, that nobody was going to lose their job. Maybe the definition of their job may change, but they were going to be provided with the tools. And here's a snippet of how you would do things in the new world to take away the fear so that they would actually be not only not quitting and not apprehensive of the new system, but begging for it to be implemented because it would make their work so much better quality, etc. type thing, right? You know, that's why I'm a strong proponent of having a separate but connected change management implementation with any sort of project as well, too.
That's great. And that was a risk that was not identified, and because there was no response to it.
Back then, it was, we'll build something and they'll have to use it, so therefore they'll use it. That was as much of change management as 18, 20 years ago thought about change management.
You're on the topic change management. How important is change management to project management?
If it's not a direct one-on-one there, it's definitely a strong it's a strong component of the overall project, whether or not the project manager is skilled or able to do it, or if a change manager comes in and works along with the project there to be able to successfully roll it out there. It's a key to the overall success. Or else there are projects that have been labeled as failures just because they've had low adaptation, but it had nothing to do with the project. The project actually delivered what it was supposed to. It was the lack of change management that caused that project to look like it was more of a failure than what it was.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like having a great tool, but you didn't train the people to use the tool.
Right.
So you have a sharp tool to cut.
Yeah. So the worker looked at it and went, yeah, that's great. Boom. You know, I'll go back to this hammer that I'm used to.
Right.
Yeah.
I spoke about risk management earlier. You taught me risk management.
I tried.
At Algonquin College.
I tried.
I think you did.
It was hard.
I think you did a fantastic job. My only issue that I had was the not with anything. It was like, that was me personally. Like whenever I get tests, I'm always like scared of tests. So when I get your test, it's like I'm always like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? So that was an issue that was me personally, but you did a fantastic job in communicating the material and conveying the material you made. No, and I'm not buttering you. I'm just telling you what it was in actuality for me, my experience, that you made the material digestible where it was easy to understand and how plain it was. It wasn't very difficult. And that was the sentiment shared with everyone.
Nice. You know what? I think that's the difference between sometimes university versus college and that. But I don't think you get extra points for building up a course so much that people can't grasp it. I've never been an elitist. I'm very much, I'm very much average Joe, and my teaching method is the same as well too.
How did you get into teaching?
You can thank Angela for that.
Really?
So when I was on the PMI board of directors for Ottawa here, I would come to her course, usually at the beginning of it, just to talk about real life project management and the whole PMI chapter, and how you could possibly get involved and what have you kind of thing, right? You know, and then I got onto the Algonquin PAC, the program advisory committee there, but I was also teaching a course at St. Lawrence College, and when at that time the head of the department found out I was teaching at St. Lawrence, they said, you can't be part of the PAC for Algonquin then. And they immediately removed me. And I said, listen, I'm trying to get on to teaching at Algonquin there, but, I never see any openings or whatever. And they ended up saying, oh, well, Angela, can we find a course for Pete to teach? So I ended up, teaching at Algonquin as well. And I really enjoy working with the next generation of project managers there. And it's exciting to have the majority of the class there really passionate about wanting to get into the field.
Oh, your style of teaching, it's not like you're teaching. It's like you come into the class and like, hey, buddy, let me tell you how it seems.
Okay.
It's like you come into the class and you're like, hey, buddies, let's go. And it's like just having a conversation with us. And that's how, like, is it natural for you, or you had to learn that kind of thing?
It's funny. I'm actually kind of an introvert.
What?
Yeah. So
Let's finish this interview. No way.
So I find that teaching actually, especially when I do 2 classes like back to back there, by the end of it, I'm like exhausted.
Yeah,
I've spent my acting or my, personality quota for the day kind of thing, right? But I do think that people learn when it's fun. And so I like it to be fun all around, either the stories or what have you kind of thing, right? I want people to feel attendance wise too. I think if I was very dry and very I would have even less attendance than some days when I don't have a test in class. That's one way of guaranteeing you fill the seats. Right?
But your classes are always full. Your classes are always full.
So yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing. But what's the thing that you enjoy the most in class when you're teaching?
I think it's the whole, when people feel comfortable enough to actually have a full dialogue and a full conversation, whether or not they agree with something that I say or they disagree, that they actually feel confident enough to be able to say, Pete, I don't agree with that. I think blah, 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 kind of thing. Well, obviously they're wrong if they're going against what I said, but, but no, I think sometimes, like a good professional debate there opens up people's eyes there as to that there's more than one way of doing a lot of things, right? Yeah. So if people bring a slightly different approach or what have you there, then that's great. And others may, like that approach differently than what I suggested, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you ever have any challenge with international students? Was there any language barrier? Did you have difficulties?
Not so much difficulties, but Algonquin did a good job of putting together a course about teaching international students there. And the one thing that I thought was really interesting is that the facilitator said sometimes students won't put up their hand because they disagree with you, because they don't want you to lose face. So they have such high respect for you that if they don't disagree, if they disagree with you, they actually don't want to embarrass you in front of the class there. I went, oh, that's interesting, because I very much like the okay, you see it that way. Okay, I think it should be blue. If you see it as green, let's talk about it, kind of thing, right? Maybe we can agree that sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's green, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always some challenge there, but I really like, and boy, last week when we had that snowstorm and I had to do 3 of my classes virtually, I hate virtual teaching. Because I can't see who is actually paying. First of all, they all turn off their cameras.
Oh, really?
Right? So even if I turn away from the PowerPoint, all I'm seeing is names there. I know most of them have gone and watched Jeopardy rather than, or Entertainment Tonight, or the silly Kardashians there or something, rather than listen to me. And I'll say, so does everyone agree with that? And after a minute, somebody take themselves off mute and says, yes, professor. It's like, you're the only one out of 40, aren't you? You were the one that drew a short straw and had to pay attention to my class. So I much prefer in-person teaching, because you can actually see who's like looking at you like, I still don't quite get it, or okay, now I get it, kind of thing, right? So you actually see when people are understanding the material there and are processing it, type thing, right?
Yeah. Have you ever had any students that you have taught come back to you to say, hey, thank you. Thank you for, your lessons, advice, anything like that, connecting with you, saying, hey, what you've taught me in class, I'm now using it.
Well, I do like to put down on my LinkedIn profile that I'm also a life coach there, because of all the students that, collectively, probably about 38 out of 40 will come up to me every semester and tell them how I've changed their lives, that I'm that wonderful, and that they should build a shrine of me in the center of Algonquin College there. Yes, I've had the odd one who have actually said, you're not as dumb as we thought we were.
No way.
But I've had an equal number try to run me down in the parking lot. So I don't know. I think I'm one of those love-hate type people. You either love me or you hate me.
I think you're just an exceptional human being.
Shocks.
I think you're very, as I said, direct, and I appreciate you coming by and stopping by to have this conversation with us, sharing your experiences. For young or recent graduates who are starting their journey as project managers, what would you say to them? It's like you looking in the rear view mirror to say,
when they come to the old age home to visit me. Nice. Bring me pudding.
If I was a new project manager, what would I have done differently? What would you say to them?
What I probably would have, first of all, I think most of us, the majority of people, have imposter syndrome, where we actually think that we aren't as qualified as we are when we're doing the job. It's like, oh, I'm sure people are going to find out I'm not this smart, or I'm not this capable, or whatever. I wish that I was more comfortable going up to people and asking them if they would either be my informal mentor or a formal mentor, and be able to learn from people who had done a job. Maybe they were 5 years more advanced in their career than me. So just be able to ask people to have a conversation there. I found that most workplaces are just like high schools. Right? There are cliques of people, there are different personalities, there's some sort of weird hierarchy in most organizations there, and there's bullies as well. And so people think that they're going to get done school and they're going to go into a workplace and it's all going to be fantastic. Right? And we can teach you the project management principles and how to professionally act and be a project manager, but it's actually navigating the workplace that is always challenging. So being able to, go up to somebody there, go for coffee with them and go, is it just me, or is this particular department difficult, or is this particular person, and kind of being able to get, the lay of the land there could make things so much smoother. Of course, to do that, you have to kind of trust the person that you're talking to, as well, right? Because if you start with that person seems like such a jerk. And then they go, that's my brother. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Of course, I had two brothers and they were kind of jerks too. So, maybe they wouldn't defend them if it was a sibling there. But, so actually getting some sort of, and even now I find that I watch people in the workplace there, and I watch and there was one particular, the former CIO at Parks Canada. He was just phenomenal when it came into building relationships with people. And you'd have one conversation with him, and next time you saw him in the hallway, it was like, hey, Pete, how's it going? Kind of thing, right? Great, Kelvin, how about you? And it's like, wow, I really want to be that personable and that dynamic with individuals there. And then somebody else, can share a great meeting, and you go, you know what, I really need to model that skill set as well too there, to be able to confidently and productively handle that type of a meeting as well too.
Who was your model?
That one I've taken bits and pieces from a lot of people on there. So that's yeah.
Did you have anyone in particular that you look on, coming up that you like? Okay,
it really depends on the actual specific skill that I'm looking at too, and vice versa. There are people that do such a poor job at something
you're like,
that you're kind of go, I'm going to anti-model you for that particular section as well too, right? So not one person is 100% perfect. So you kind of look at their strengths and go, okay, if I can take that bit about leading a meeting and that bit from that person on how to, no matter where you are in the organization there, always remember, people's names and little bits of information and what have you, kind of thing, right? It makes everybody feel special.
Yeah.
Right. So
is there a mantra that you live by? Is there?
You know what? I used to be a lot more serious when I was younger, and everything was like life and death and, kind of thing. Right now, I'm more, this will pass. This will pass, right? So, I was actually somehow on Facebook, which I'll explain Facebook to your younger generation there. But
they're like, what's that?
Yeah, what's that? What's that? Oh, that my grandma's on that. I bet my grandma's connected to Pete. But
I'm still on Facebook.
But there was actually a piece of jewelry. I think it was a ring that actually was engraved with nothing is permanent. Kind of thing on the ring. And I went, oh, that's interesting, because that, sometimes you need that reminder that, okay, yeah, that's pretty serious, but that'll pass in time, right? Either, something bad that happened at work, something bad that happened on your project or whatever, even something sometimes bad that happened in life. And, but it's like, hey, this is what defines us as people, is these growing opportunities to actually, develop. Not everyone goes through this life in a very charmed life, right? We all have something that'll happen to us that'll help build character.
Yeah. I take that one personal. Lost my brother 2017, my dad 2020, my mom 2021. And I'm still at it.
My dad's been dead for 30 years, and my brother died 20 years ago. And there are times that, holiday or, vacations or something will be said or whatever kind of thing, right? I remember after my dad was dead, 6 months later, I had to fix something around my place. And I said to myself, I got to phone Dad and ask him how to do.
Wow.
And then I realized, shit, I can never do that again, kind of thing, right? So,
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going and be the best version you can be, because you know they would be proud of you, of what you are today
Yeah.
and what you'll be tomorrow.
And I think, indeed, your parents are proud. No, you said you lost your dad, but I think you have done very well, and you are impacting lives, whether you know it or not, whether you like to hear it or not. I'm letting you know that that was my personal experience. I don't know if professors, employers know, whenever it is that they interact with anyone, how important it is that you be good to people, because you never know who you're impacting. And being at Algonquin College, which was just a phenomenal experience, I've met some exceptional teachers there, not knowing that they are doing what they're doing and impacting lives. But I am one of them who have been impacted by you. I see Angela, Martin, Paul, Faisal, and I'm saying that continue to be who you are. You're much appreciated, and even when people don't tell you, I am telling you that you have done well and you're doing well. Thank you so very much for stopping by. If persons want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect. And this was a great experience, and I really enjoyed having you in class. I enjoy our interactions beyond class as well.
Yeah, thanks. And thank you
Thank you.
for joining us with this amazing episode. We had a chat with Pete Grieve. I'm telling you, he's just dropping gems after gems on this podcast. Thank you so very much for watching. My name is Daron. Remember, whatever it is that you do, do it with clean hands and a pure heart. See you next time.